Now, Hillary Clinton is set to announce her VP pick tomorrow, maybe even as early as sometime today. Now, in the running, there's Cory Booker, there's Elizabeth Warren, Tom Perez, Julian Castro, Tim Kaine, and Tom Vilsack. So there's a big, that's her short list, essentially, of who she would pick. Now, Kaine and Vilsack are actually considered as being the leading contenders for this top VP spot. Now, as far as Tim Kaine is concerned, I've got some information on him. You see, interestingly enough, according to The Intercept, he spent the entire week going to bat for the financial industry. I'm going to let The Intercept explain. On Monday, Kaine signed on to 2 letters, one to federal banking regulators and the other to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, urging them to loosen regulations on certain financial players. The timing of the letters, sent while Kaine is being vetted for the top of the ticket, could show potential financial industry donors that he is willing to serve as an ally on their regulatory issues. Now, it's been pointed out that Tim Kaine is the establishment choice. He is safe. And what do I mean by safe? Donor friendly. The donors can take a look at him and go, oh, okay, we thought you were going to go with somebody who's against our interests. Well, Tim Kaine is definitely for our interests. Now let me explain. In the letters, Kaine is offering to support community banks, credit unions, and even large regional banks. While separate from the Wall Street mega banks like JPMorgan Chase and Bank of America, these financial institutions often partner with the larger industry to fight regulations and can be hostile to government efforts to safeguard the public, especially if it crimps their profits. And look, there's a reason that he focused on community banks, because the larger Wall Street banks are politically toxic to the conversation. If you write a letter saying, I support you, JPMorgan, and I want to help you fight these regulations, well, how's that going to look? But if you fight for the small banks, the credit unions, well, that doesn't look so bad. But in reality, it is bad, because these banks are still governed by the same regulation. Less regulation on a community bank, which is what he's calling for, also means less regulation on the Bank of America or on JPMorgan Chase or one of these larger Wall Street institutions. After all, they're all banks. It's just the size that matters, right? Not only that, but these banks are also a good source of donors. Donors the establishment wants to lure back from Republicans. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, the Independent Community Bankers of America have given 74% of their $873,949 in donations this cycle to the Republican Party. So, of course, they're looking at those donations and they're like, we're only getting 26% of those donations. We would like to have more. Tim Kaine would love to help you. And that's exactly what he's doing. Now there's more. Regional banks like PNC Financial Services, SunTrust Bank, and First Republic Bank have even given higher percentage to the Republican Party. Now these are donors, as I said, that the Democrats would love to have. Oh, give me that sweet bank money. How can we help you? Now the letter to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, The Intercept continues, signed by a bipartisan coalition of 16 Democrats and every other Republican senator, asked that the consumer agency carefully tailor its regulations to exempt community banks and credit unions. It posits these smaller banks as essential to spurring economic growth and prosperity at a local level. Now, some of you listening might think that, hey, that sounds kind of reasonable. Well, what's wrong with that? I mean, I go to a credit union. I have a community. I like my community bank. Well, I like my community bank too, right? The problem is that the rules like this could allow community banks and credit unions to sell high-risk mortgages or personal loans without the disclosure and ability to pay rules that are in place across different banks in the industry. And let's not forget the simple thing. The Republican Party, the entire Republican caucus, supports this idea. It might want to give you pause. Now, usually if the majority of Republicans are in favor of something, but most Democrats are not, it kind of deserves a second look, even if it seems harmless. Now, The second letter, sent to the heads of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, seek to protect an even bigger subset of banks, the large regional institutions like PNC and SunTrust. Kaine and 3 Democratic colleagues want regulators to change certain rules so they don't apply to these regional banks. Now the problem here, they explain, is that some regional banks have become so large that they may reach a threshold, triggering daily reporting requirements under the Liquidity Coverage Ratio rule, which, as they explain, requires qualifying banks to hold enough assets to cover a 30-day period of financial stress. Kaine and his colleagues argue that these rules would impose significant burdens on the firms and want the regulators to alter that threshold and exempt all regional banks regardless of their size. Oh, great. They also want to eliminate so-called advanced approaches capital requirements, which governs the ratio of reserves banks must carry to cover potential losses. For regional banks, even if they have over $250 billion in assets, the rule captures many regional banks that do not share the same risk profile or complexity as their larger, systemic important brethren, the senators write. So why would this rule be in place then? Well, if a large regional bank that gets into trouble, if it gets into trouble, it has as much chance of creating a ripple effect in the economy as a mega bank does. So there's that same level of risk. So it really doesn't make sense to exempt these regional banks from this rule as the senators want to do. Now, that's kind of the nuts and bolts, and I realize that there's a lot of information there. It gets a little wonky, but I'll kind of break this down as to why these letters, or what these letters are a purpose for, okay? These letters are a signal from Tim Kaine to Hillary Clinton and the banks that, hey, I'll be your buddy. I'll help you get campaign contributions from the banks, and in return, we're going to help certain banks by eliminating regulations. That kind of means that he's a friend of the banks. Yes, he's a friend of the banks, but not exactly of the people. In fact, Kaine was one of 13 Democrats who did not sign into a separate letter authored by Senate Banking Committee Chairperson Sherrod Brown, supporting the strengthening of new rules for payday lenders. So he loves the banks, he's part of the establishment, and now that Bernie Sanders is gone, Hillary Clinton doesn't have to pretend to be a progressive anymore. In fact, I have a video of her doing some famous triangulation. Watch.
Well, first of all, that is just a wild reading of what happened in the primary. I started off talking about getting to universal health care coverage. I started off talking about making college affordable. I'm proud of the campaign that Senator Sanders and I ran against each other because it actually was based on issues.
But did he move you to the left?
No, he moved.
Not at all.
No,
Did he move the Democratic Party to the left?
Well, I think he got more people into the Democratic Party, and we are the center-left party. And I'm proud of that. We are the center-left party. But it's center-left. And part of what we have to do is prove that government can work and not just hope for it and talk about it, but actually get it to work. That's where my experience really comes to the forefront.
No, I didn't move it all to the left. No, we're center-left. We're a center-left party. Emphasis on the center. Center. We're the center party. We're not left at all. Bernie Sanders did not move us to the left at all. No, he's got more people in the party. We're not left at all. We're center. We're center-left. Sanders didn't affect me. That was just talk. Don't worry, banks. We're going to play ball. So don't you worry. I love that. That right there is a very, very telling video. Very telling. And see, this is why I think Tim Kaine will likely be the vice presidential nominee. It was never going to be Elizabeth Warren or even a not so well-known progressive as Tom Perez, which I think would be an excellent pick. And if it's not Kaine, it certainly won't be anyone who isn't Wall Street approved. Like, for example, it could end up being another corporatist Democrat like Tom Vilsack. Because look, she's going to pick this safe choice, this establishment choice, because that's exactly who she is and what she wants. She wants someone who can signal to Wall Street and the banks, don't worry, the Democratic Party, it's counter to the rhetoric that you might have heard Don't worry, the Democratic Party, we're still open for business.